on 2 o'clock. We are still waiting for a number of people. I don't know whether you want to commence, Deputy Speaker, or whether you want to wait to.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. I think let's just wait a few minutes.
Thank you very much.
I will take the lead from you if you feel. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Ms. Fisher, and good afternoon to all our attendees today to attend our first virtual roundtable engagement on small, medium and micro enterprises, and really with the objective to propelling SMEs as a key economic driver for the Western Cape. So lovely to see you all here on a Friday afternoon, and thank you for your time, because I do know Friday afternoons are usually precious for you to start your weekends. But just to give you a little bit of background, as Ms. Fisher said, that I am the Deputy Speaker of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, and we are very committed in our mandate and objective to having meaningful conversations and engagements with stakeholders in order to be able to effectively represent them in the interest of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. So we focus a great deal on civic society engagements and to try and really understand what the needs of the stakeholders are, as well as the opportunities that maybe we haven't actually thought of. It's very important that we really remain relevant when we speak on your behalf. And studies have shown that 60% of employment is provided by SMMEs, and it is forecasted that between 60 to 80% of South Africa's GDP will be from SMMEs by 2030. So considering the nature of the economy of the Western Cape, and particularly considering the key challenges that we're facing at this point, we have decided to focus particularly on the tourism sector, which includes hospitality, and for the purpose really for this discussion. So we're here to listen, we're here to analyze, to understand, and also really to discuss with you on recommendations, suggestions, and possible solutions. We will also be seeing presentations from the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Tourism in the Western Cape, the Department of Economic Opportunities and Tourism, as well as a brief session from the Economic Growth SMME Support Program run by the City of Cape Town. as participants, you'll be able to engage with the members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, as well as the relevant departments, on 3 critical challenges that the sector is facing at the moment, namely overcoming the COVID-19 setbacks, the energy crisis, and rising inflation. Please know that all the contributions that you will be making, and particularly the recommendations, suggested and possible solutions, will be tabled to the members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament and could be referred to the relevant standing committees, as well as a result in questions to the Minister and the Premier during our sessions in the House. So we're happy to welcome the tourism SMME stakeholders from across the Western Cape. Thank you. I will now move on to the agenda. Karen, I'm not sure, Ms. Schroeder, if, why your screen does not show your face, but maybe if you could just put yourself on with your camera, switch your camera off, that would make it much easier. Thank you very much. So we're now going to listen to the inputs on the Standing Committee's oversight regarding propelling SMMEs as key economic drivers in the Western Cape. This presentation will be done by my colleague of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, Honourable Kayla Murray, who is the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism. If we could just flight the presentation, and Honourable Murray, are you online? Just before I see, before we move on to that, just hold on, Honourable Murray. I see there is a hand up. Give me a second so I can see who that is. I don't. Oh, I do. Ms. Schrader, yes. I see you've got a problem with your camera. If you just want to switch your microphone on, then I can hear you.
Yes, sorry, something is wrong on my side, but I can hear you clearly and I won't miss anything. Thank you so much for your concern.
Thank you, Ms. Schrader. Thank you to you. Over to you, Honourable Murray. Welcome to this roundtable discussion.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to everybody who's joined us today on a Friday. Yes, we're heading into the weekend, so I'm trying to keep this as short and sweet as possible, but also to highlight areas of interest for yourselves. So I'm focusing today on propelling SMMEs as a key economic driver in the Western Cape. But what I'd like to preface this to say is that as a standing committee, we take a quite macro focus. So we look at structural issues, and that allows us to go into the nitty-gritty, the day-to-day lives, the day-to-day impact on the lives of those who work within the SMME space. Next slide, please. So just on my standing committee, Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism, is responsible for the following: oversight and accountability. We influence policy, budgetary review, legislation, public engagement, and we also make reports and recommendations. So this is just a general background of how we operate in the day-to-day. Next slide, please. You'll see here is an example of us in action with the City of Cape Town, receiving their briefing in terms of what they're doing with the tourism season, how they're engaging with different stakeholders. Next slide, please. And here on the ground, we are in Cape Agulhas municipality. Here we had the opportunity to visit local SMMEs who had started something called an LED, which is essentially a way of having your shop within a containerized environment in a central area. So we can move on to the quarterly labor force survey statistics. I think before going into the nuts and bolts of what we do as a committee, it's important to outline firstly where we are. So as a province, you know that this province in particular demonstrates the best economic growth and the highest resilience of all other provinces. If we look at the last quarterly labor force survey, we saw that 40.3% of South Africa's new jobs in the past year were created in this province alone, which is quite significant. But also we see that 14% of the national GDP is driven by sectors like tourism, finance, and tech in our province. There's been massive economic growth under the Western Cape government, but more is needed because at the end of the day, with an unemployment rate over 20%, it's still unacceptable. People are still struggling to put food on the table. And I think that's the importance of today's discussion. How do we address that? How do we overcome that? Where is the red tape? Next slide. So again, just to touch on some of the challenges that underpin this relatively high unemployment rate, we know that most people and most businesses grapple with load shedding, with water resilience, with unemployment, poverty, and crime. And what we really need in order to address this is to accelerate economic growth and to accelerate job creation. But it also means that we need to take our strategy as a Western Cape and decouple it from the strategy of South African government, because that strategy is unfortunately not working. Next slide, please. The way in which the Western Cape government plans to do this is essentially through its growth for jobs strategy. This was tabled earlier this year by the Minister of Finance, Murray Wenger, and what it aims to do, and this is where I touch on us having a more structural focus in terms of SMEs, is it aims to create an even playing field for every industry, for every sector, so that we can get the basics right. And when I say the basics, I mean making sure that our communities are safe, making sure that our learners get an education and that they can develop their skill set and actually pursue meaningful job opportunities. It means making sure that our healthcare system works as it should, our roads function properly, because at the end of the day, all of this is the supply chain that leads into a functioning SMME and also a functioning multinational corporation. So the idea behind this is by getting these basics right, they call it through horizontal enablement, that we'll see 4 to 6% economic growth by 2035. It's quite ambitious, but we do believe that this is actually achievable. Next slide, please. So one of the other structural areas that we've been focusing on is the AGOA renewal. AGOA is essentially an act by the US Parliament or Senate, which enables South Africa to participate in trade with the US, along with many other countries. But our inclusion in AGOA was essentially brought into dispute as a result of international concerns between the US and South Africa's relationship. And we know the reasons why, because of the ongoing war, because of alignment. And so what we sought to do through this committee was to ensure that all the industries, all the farmers, all those affected in the value chain were actually represented in their concerns. And this took a myriad approach, a myriad apologies, I'm stumbling over my words. But essentially, we took many different efforts and avenues in order to get to where we are today. And that included lobbying, that included engaging with the minister, that included getting briefings at the NCOP, writing resolutions, having those resolutions delivered in person in the US, visiting the US, and making sure that essentially this issue, and particularly the 136,000 jobs on the line, were not pushed to the side because of the importance of this act in so many people's lives and livelihoods. Next slide, please. So here, I think it shows you the story. So we started off with writing a resolution to have a debate on the economic importance of it in South Africa, right through to Premier Wendy himself taking that resolution and handing it over to the office of Senator Chris Coons, who we believe will be taking this bill forward. But of course, as I said, the committee's work here really was multifaceted, and it required a lot of ongoing pushing, a lot of ongoing engagement, and a lot of listening. Next slide, please. This is an example of us engaging with industry, Summer Citrus South Africa, where we had Mask, MSC, and various citrus growers in attendance talking to us about their concerns about AGOA. Next slide, please. Another key issue that we've been focusing on is airport expansion. We recognize that it's a significant threat for many businesses in terms of whether the tourists will arrive, if they're in hospitality, or whether they'll be able to get cargo out of the country if they're exporters. And so the expansion of Cape Town International and George International Airports is essential in this regard. So the committee has pre-mortems and post-mortems, which sound quite morbid, but in essence, what we aim to do here is just to bring all the stakeholders involved when it comes to the tourism season before and after, and engage with them in terms of what are the bottlenecks and how are we going to address it to ensure a successful summer season.
The Airports Company South Africa is awaiting their permissions, and they will receive their permissions at the end of September. So I'll be writing to them in October to get clarity on whether they are finally going to be proceeding with their expansion. This is really exciting for us, and I think it's going to be a massive driver of revenue into our local economy and create a lot more jobs. Next slide, please. So here, this is just an example of what the pre and post-mortem have looked at. One of the issues that we've seen, for example, is the non-functioning of the e-gates. So we've also been in contact with the Department of Home Affairs, and we'll start engaging with the Border Management Authority. We have engaged with SARS to understand and unpack what are the issues here. What we've found predominantly is that it's an IT issue and it's an integration issue following change management within national government, but it does include part of the issues that we are examining. Next slide, please. Here, as you can see, I think this really demonstrates the importance of us pursuing more transparency when it comes to our airports, their capacity, and also making sure that they can function at an optimum. Because right now, we're looking at a 25% increase in international travel compared to previous seasons. We've moved from recovery to growth, which is an excellent achievement, but we need to make sure that in addition to that growth, we have the capability and infrastructure to support it. Next slide, please. So the next area, and this is a newer area that we've started to focus on, is port access and turnaround times. So I think it goes without saying, most people know that the port is functioning under what it should be in terms of its TEUs, in terms of its turnaround time, in terms of the waiting time for trucking. And there are a lot of issues that contribute towards this. But what we're doing as a committee is we have had a briefing in terms of ports capability from Transnet and from the Department of Economic Development and Tourism. And we've also, in my own capacity, started asking parliamentary questions on a monthly basis to develop a dashboard which identifies the challenges and the improvements that are being made. And this follows the very, very close collaboration that has now taken place between the department and Transnet to address some of these inefficiencies. It also allows us to conduct better oversight and ensure that we really, really understand the nuts and bolts of what is going right and what is going wrong. Next slide, please. Another key area of focus for us has been remote working visas. We've been focused on this for quite a long time, and the committee has managed to establish a good working relationship with Home Affairs. But this in particular is an area of deep frustration because the remote working visa would be a quick win in order to inject more capital into our country, create jobs both directly and indirectly, and to ensure that foreign capital is spent here. People's earnings from the UK and from the US will go much further in South Africa and in Cape Town than they will back home. And we also live in such a beautiful destination that it really draws people in. So with that, we are awaiting further feedback from the Department of Home Affairs. They've just recently briefed us and informed us that they are waiting on some changes to be implemented by the 30th of September and submitted to the State Law Attorney's Office. From there, those changes to the Operation Vulindlela report will be tabled in terms of legislation, put to public comment, and then from there signed by the minister. Next slide, please. I won't go into this into too much detail because I do note that the City of Cape Town will be talking a bit to SMMEs as well, but this is just an example of one of the programs that the Department of Economic Development provides to SMMEs, and that's in the form of the Booster Fund. So you'll see in 2023 alone, 8.18 million was allocated towards this. And for the 2023 Booster Fund projects this year, there was an allocation of 4.61 million that was noted to continue. Next slide, please. There's also the Western Cape Government and JSE SME Accelerator. So what underpins this is essentially collaboration between DDAT and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, matching SMEs with capital providers, ensuring that sectors targeted for growth are supported, and also job creation and economic activity. Next slide, please. And then just to highlight, these are some of the key areas that the department has actually allocated budget to that support SMEs, but I won't focus on that too much because I don't want to take up too much time from the department themselves. But just to touch on technology and innovation for support or to support SMEs, red tape reduction, and also the artisan development program. Next slide, please. So on the ground, I've got a few pictures that we can go through quite quickly afterwards because I know I'm taking up a bit too much time. But we've also been focusing on tourism license backlogs, particularly for those who transport tourists during the high seasons. We've looked at supporting major projects. So, for example, we've recently visited the Cape Winelands Airport, which is a very, very exciting initiative, and I'm very much looking forward to that being communicated further by CWA. On the SMME Booster Project, we have, as I've mentioned before, gone out and visited them and seen how they're working on the ground. And we've also shared expertise. We've shared the SMME Booster Fund experience with the Gauteng legislature and hosted them as a delegation. And of course, the procurement support or procurement client center, we've gone and engaged with Provincial Treasury there, visited them and noted how that could be another area or avenue for SMME support. Next slide, please. So this is just us in Cape Winelands. You can go to the next one. This is us engaging with agri-packers. Next one, please. And this was a passion project of mine, visiting Muscle Bay, where we got to engage with some spaza shops that were using new tech in the form of blockchain or cryptocurrency to make payments. Next slide, please. And here you can see more engagement with Innovation City and also a picture on the ground with the winner of the Sage Venture Capital Investor Fund. They won 25,000 Rand. They're called Food with Form. Essentially, they focus on providing Nzamzi meat or cruel-free meat. Next slide, please. So that's my story. I hope that was helpful and insightful. If you have any questions, you're welcome to get in touch with me. And those are my contact details if you want to get in touch.
Thank you very much, Honourable Murray. And I think, you know, what stakeholders may not realise is sometimes you have to lobby for 5-10 years before you get things right. So I would assume perhaps that the remote working visa and all the work you've been doing was probably about 6 to 12 months away, still in the pipeline, bearing in mind we have an election. But we certainly hope that by next summer, which is not this December, but next summer, we might just have a remote working visa. I think will be incredibly helpful for the tourism sector. So thank you very much for your input and very valuable projects that you're busy with. Thank you. We now will move over to Mr. Joshua Volmerans and Ms. Lindy Kumbaris. Mr. Volmerans is the Director of Enterprise Development, and Ms. Lindy Kumbaris is the Deputy Director of Tourism Marketing Development from the Department of Economic Development and Tourism here in the Western Cape. And they will be talking about the status of the role of SMMEs in relation to tourism in the Western Cape. Mr. Volmerans and Ms. Kumbaris, are you online?
Yes, we are, Chairperson.
You may,
Yes, we are.
if we could just flight the presentation, please. And who will be taking us through?
So, Chair, it will be a combined presentation between Ms. Kampuris and myself, but Ms. Kampuris will start the presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kumburis, and over to you.
Thank you and good afternoon, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Chairperson and members. As noted, I am Lindy Kamburis and it's an honour to be here. So if we can go to the first slide. So today we'll speak about the product development support available to tourism SMEs, training support programs, as well as green incentives available to tourism businesses. Next slide, please. So product development support available to tourism SMEs. Next one. So here we will be discussing the Growth for Jobs Tourism Challenge Fund. So this is a fund of 5 million that we had for this year, and we are hoping to also have it again next year. The fund is aimed at providing co-funding to initiatives of tourism organizations working with tourism SMEs to enable businesses to enhance and expand their tourism offerings in areas with high growth potential. We are also considering now individual businesses to apply. And for those who want to know about how to apply, we have put a little link at the bottom, but the best would always be to follow the Western Cape Government on our social medias, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, just to always be aware of what opportunities are out there. Next slide, please. So here are just a list of requirements for actually applying for the fund, and then also what we will not be funding. So those are quite important to note. But unfortunately, we have found that unfortunately a lot of the applicants submit half proposals and not all of the recommended or required documents. Next slide, please. So here you can actually see we had 69 proposals. It's quite a big jump to only 23 proposals that met the pre-qualifying criteria. And we only ended up with actually supporting 4 proposals to date. So the challenge here is, as mentioned, that the proposals are not very well written or missing information. Also, the minimum criteria, the documents are missing. So to try and fix this, we'll be hosting grant writing workshops in the future. Next slide, please. In addition, we also promote other funding opportunities through a support guide that is available in print and electronic copy, and SMMEs are welcome to download the guide. This lists all the organizations and all of the funds available for small enterprises. Again, we've put the link there, but you are most welcome to also contact me and I will gladly share the link or the actual PDF to this. Next slide, please. And this will be my colleague, Joshua.
So thank you so much, Lindy. So Ms. Kayla Murray already touched on the SME Capital Matching Initiative, and this is a program that the department is running in conjunction and in partnership with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So the tourism and film industry is part of those particular sectors that has been targeted for support. So it is a fund that is looking at growth-oriented small businesses to look at how they are able to access funding opportunities through this particular platform. So the idea is to assist and capacitate these businesses through capital or boot camps, and then also get them funding ready for an event that is scheduled for 27th of November for this year, where they'll be able to fund to a range of different funders to access funding opportunities. And from my understanding, we've looked at the applications. So some of the tourism businesses already has come through in that particular regard. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Joshua. So we also provide training support. We tend to focus on staff working in the industry but many of the staff that we do train actually work in tourism, SMMEs, or small enterprises. Next slide, please. This year, for example, we are doing the customer care training for frontline staff. The intention is to train 150 frontline workers. Currently, we are rolling out the program in Cape Town, Overberg, and the West Coast. But the intention is to run this program again next year, targeting the Garden Route, the Cape Winelands, and the Cape Karoo. Similarly, we publish calls for proposals through regional and local tourism organizations and industry bodies such as Women in Tourism, FEDASA, SATA, SARCI, etc. It is important for SMMEs to join these bodies because that is how they will know about these wonderful opportunities. Next slide, please. We do assist with tourist guide training as well. Many of these guides operate as sole proprietors or one-man or women shows. And this is an example of the training program we've done this year, which is for 38 tourist guides in Cape Town. We are also busy organizing a 2-day tourist guide bootcamp. And again, we are advertising application calls through industry bodies. Next slide. Thank you, Joshua.
Thanks, Lindy. Can we move to the next slide? So I'm going to talk to some of the green incentives, but I mean, just in preparation for the discussion just around some of the incentives available for tourism businesses, they are just to give some context in terms of where we are linked to the energy crisis. So as we all know, in the energy crisis, it's significantly impacting on the various businesses within the Western Cape. And economic growth is fundamentally dependent on the reliable and affordable energy supply. And energy security is currently one of the biggest challenges to or constraints in terms of economic growth. The South African Reserve Bank has estimated that load shedding will wipe up to 2 percentage points from the GDP for 2023, and also will have a negative impact of about 0.5% linked to inflation. So the Minister of Electricity in 2022 also indicated that there was about upwards of 650,000 jobs lost due to load shedding. We've also seen that some of the businesses either closing or being kind of used, the impact of load shedding being a tipping point for a lot of the businesses, given the impact of COVID already in terms of their sustainability. And a lot of businesses had that closed, so which obviously then impacted. And given the extent of load shedding, is expected that more jobs will be shed during the current financial year. So the tourism sector was severely impacted, not just by COVID-19, but I think the double shock is now linked to the global or the energy crisis in South Africa. And obviously that will also basically derail some of the gains that has been made by tourism businesses post-COVID-19. So the unpredictable power cuts can lead to difficulty in providing consistent services, which obviously then impacts on overall tourist experience. I think the impact of the stage 6 load shedding, and I mean, there's also talks about higher stages of load shedding and how businesses will be able to impact on that. And I mean, we've seen during stage 6, you have about 4 hours where you're off in terms of your operating. And I think we've, over the last few months, also experienced where businesses are not operating between 8 to 10 hours per day, which significantly impacts on the operations and the sustainability of any business. I think businesses also been experiencing significant expenses in terms of setting up coping mechanisms, especially in the tourism industry, where, for example, businesses have opted to look at procuring additional linen, for example, to reduce quicker turnaround times. They've either outsourced it, they've had to procure additional items like torches, candles, and also kind of your handheld lights, and installing gas cookers. And this obviously impacts on the bottom line of these particular businesses. So the excessive running costs, I think, especially of generators, to minimize disruptions, is significantly impacting on business and the bottom line of those particular businesses as well. Next slide. So I've just put the slide. This is in terms of growth for jobs. There's some of the key focus areas for energy resilience. So there's 6 particular focus areas. I'm not going to go into too much details in terms of this, but it's about looking at disaster mitigation and management. How do we look at the impact of load shedding, reducing that? Looking at generation, procurement, and trading of low carbon energy, or also look at new energy generation, the maintenance expansion of required energy infrastructure, It's also about energy efficiency at scale, looking at specifically how do we look at using provincial energy efficiency surveys, looking at developing of provincial energy programs as well. And also there's a strategic development and management, looking at how we develop a Western Cape integrated resource plan, and then also looking at developing strong partnerships and strengthened ecosystem with energy stakeholders. And then lastly, it's focused on increasing investment in the energy sector, especially looking at developing the Western Cape Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, and establishing various project preparation facility to take forward and identify projects to bankability. Next slide. So some of the initiatives undertaken by the department over the recent past is also to look at how do we support SMMEs in terms of dealing with the impact of load shedding. So what the department has done is convened a couple of webinars. So the first webinar we had, we invited development finance institutions such as your IDC, NEF, CIFA, and business partners, and to look at exposing SMMEs about what are the different funding opportunities there are linked to alternative energy solutions. I think what was useful, obviously, is that businesses obviously don't have often these exposures in terms of looking at what is available. So there's often there's different funding that is available for these SMMEs, and these webinars in that sense provided that kind of platform to expose businesses to understand what support is available by government. What we've also done in another webinar, we've invited the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association and the Association for Renewable Energy Practitioners. And I think what the value of inviting these professional associations, it's about looking at if companies want to transition to alternative energy solutions. So some of the key questions that these type of businesses would have to look at is how do you choose, for example, your alternative energy solution? How do you select an accredited service provider? What are the kind of acts, regulations, and safety standards that must be complied with? And also, I mean, they also spoke to, for example, SACPIA as a SACPIA PV Green Card that looks at different elements, for example, links to skills development, quality assurance, as well as SMME development in that sense as well. So I think the importance is, I think, just about exposing businesses to what is available. So if they want to transition, what are the kind of key focus areas that they need to look at? We also had a presentation from National Treasury where they spoke about the Energy Bounce Back Loan Guarantee Scheme, which is basically an initiative in terms of supporting the resilience of small businesses and households to the continual difficulties resulting from unreliable power supply and load shedding. And it's about looking at how does the energy buyback scheme look at incentivizing the generation of an additional 1,000 megawatts of power through rooftop photovoltaic solar PV over the next 12 months. So they've got three, for example, different mechanisms. They've got a loan guarantee for rooftop solar and household investments. They've got a mechanism dealing with loan guarantee for rooftop solar for energy service companies. And then they've got a working capital loan for businesses in rooftop solar chains. I think what is important, obviously, is that National Treasury is responsible for the oversight of it, but it will be basically administered by your commercial banks, your DFIs, and other wholesalers as well. Next slide. So what I've just done, I've just taken some of the slides, for example, that emerged from our discussions in our webinar into access to funding, just to show some of the funds that are available. So business partners have a energy fund for SMMEs. It's a loan of about 250,000 to up to 2 million. So it's looking at 6 months worth of operational energy cost based on historical financial statements, and it's funding for operational energy cost. And it's not in isolation, but addition to the financing of energy and plant equipment. So some of the sources that they do fund for is for solar panels, batteries. They look at generators, wind turbine, and also inverter systems. Next slide. So the Tourism Transformation Fund, it's also a fund that's being managed by the National Empowerment Fund, and it's also about looking at supporting businesses in the tourism industry, specifically looking at transitioning to alternative energy. So some of the details, if people are interested, we'll can go to the NEF or business partners website just for additional information linked to the application criteria and stuff like that. Next slide. So the IDC, for example, also has a scheme, an energy resilience scheme, where they also look at 3 different types of funding: a scheme for energy services companies, the localization of renewable energy components, and then township and renewable and rural energy support scheme. So these are some of the schemes that are available by the DFIs and by organizations like business partners that will assist and support SMMEs in terms of switching and looking at alternative energy solutions and installing that within their businesses. Next slide, Lindy.
Thank you, Joshua. So just to connect with the IDC, this is the Green Tourism Incentive Program. It is actually the National Department of Tourism's program, but it's actually implemented by the IDC, funded by NDT, but implemented by IDC. So the Green Tourism Incentive Program is a resource efficiency incentive program and the objective is to encourage and support private sector tourism enterprises to adapt responsible tourism practices by moving towards the sustainable management and usage of energy and water resources. So the Green Tourism Incentive Program broadly offers the following benefits to qualifying tourism enterprises. It's the full cost for a new resource efficiency audit or the full cost for reviewing an existing resource efficiency audit. The grant funding to qualifying small and micro enterprises on a sliding scale from 50% to 90% of the total cost of implementing resource efficiency interventions, which is capped at 1 million per business. And qualifying enterprises may implement projects in phases in order to better manage their cash flow over a 2-year project implementation period. So the link is provided there should anybody be interested to actually applying. I might need to check on something, but to my knowledge, this is only applicable to graded businesses. So your grading council, accommodation, and I think events venues is allowed to or able to apply for this funding. But the link is there should anybody wish to apply. And I think, apologies, I think that is it from our side with regards to the presentation.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. Kumboros and Mr. Vilmarans, for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have open for discussion after the next presentation. So without much of a break, I would like to go straight through to Ms. Fouchier, who's going to be giving a presentation on the Economic Growth SMME Support Program from the City of Cape Town. Is that correct, Ms. Fouchier?
It's first the Director of Energy, AJ Trakim, from the Department of Economic Development, and I will follow it immediately after him.
Okay.
So you can hand over to AJ. Thank you.
That was missing. My apologies. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Deputy Speaker and honourable members.
Hello, Mr.
And businesses here today. I just want to check you can hear me and I'm audible.
Loud and clear.
Fantastic, thank you. I've got a couple of slides. If I may share from my side, please, Awana. I've made one adjustment because Joshua has covered some of the equipment and I don't want to duplicate. Can you give me a minute while I just put it in presentation mode? Thank you. Just confirming you can see my presentation.
I can see it.
Excellent. Okay. So to start off with, I think it's well recognized that the energy crisis that we're experiencing is not a simple crisis. It won't be resolved quickly. We're seeing a complete overhaul of the power sector right now, and it's at a point where we're unbundling Eskom. There's a lot of effort that's going into regulatory processes to do this. The Electricity Regulation Amendment Act has been published for public comment, and that's establishing a transmission company and opening the market away from the monopolistic situation with Eskom alone, providing power to broader than just Eskom and more into the private sector. The kind of changes we're seeing are radical, and they're happening at an unprecedented rate. It's happening not just because of the crisis, but it's happening also because what we're seeing globally as a shift to in energy practices and a shift in energy towards more sustainable and greener energy supplies. Western Cape government, the Metro City of Cape Town, local municipalities, and the private sector have a critical role to play. And I'll give you a little bit of an insight into how we've encapsulated the roles that they have to play in the program that we've set up. Some of the recent regulatory changes, earlier on, Joshua mentioned the stages of load shedding. There's a new standard that's out that governs load shedding and load curtailment that is proposed, changing the 8 stages over 24 hours to 16 stages over 32 hours. So these are the kind of changes that we're seeing happening at a rapid pace. We're also seeing tariff increases, which will impact us. The Eskom have proposed a tariff increase of 31.4% over the next 2 years. And then there's an electricity price determination methodology that's also out for comment. So this is just giving you a sense of the amount of legislation and regulations that are coming out. But it's not all doom and gloom. I think on the other side, we're seeing facilities that have been given the green light to go ahead. So the Risk Mitigation Independent Power Producer Program that the DMRE had put forward had given the green light to a project called Oya, which sits on the sort of Western Cape, Northern Cape border. And it's the first of a hybrid facility that looks at wind, solar, and battery, providing dispatchable power and no longer needing diesel generators to provide this dispatchable power. So there's opportunities as well in this current situation. Some of the context, and this has changed over the last week. Before we had some respite on the center of this screen, you'll see is predominantly red. Over the last week, this is that had previously been spots of green and yellow. Essentially, what it's indicating is that we're looking at stage 2 load shedding for the most of the year ahead, at a minimum, with only 1 week of really under stage 2. So stage 2 and above is what we're expecting for the entire year up until next year. This is Eskom's outlook that they publish on a weekly basis. And this is for the week ending, week 38 ending last week. One of the issues that we're experiencing is that there may be a higher incident of that likely risk scenario materializing, so stage 4 and higher. And this is really because of various reasons. It could be more unplanned outages than we're expecting, or it could be that imports are creating a problem. I know about 2 weeks ago we had an import issue with power that we import from neighboring Kaboro Bassa scheme in Mozambique that caused an issue. At the moment, I think a serious concern for the Western Cape is Koeberg's maintenance program. The Unit 1 is currently under refurbishment. That has been delayed again. It was supposed to be finalized in September, but now been delayed to November. This impacts on the Unit 2 outage, which happens, and the license that the Koeberg has to operate expires in July 2024. So really, it's a race against time for them to finalize all the refurbishments before then. And just giving a sense of what that means in terms of megawatts. So one stage of load shedding is equivalent to about 1,000 megawatts, and each unit of Koeberg provides about 920 megawatts, so almost one stage of load shedding. So it does create a challenge to Eskom and particularly to us in the Western Cape, because we may be affected more negatively. There's limited ability for Eskom to deliver power to the Western Cape if that happens. So we might have higher levels of load shedding across the country just because of this particular scenario. And then lastly is the EAF. EAF stands for Energy Availability Factor. Again, this is published weekly. And there's a comparison between this time or last week this year and and the same week the year before. And what it's showing is that it's a deterioration of the performance of Eskom's coal fleet. And this is really due to aging coal plants. Most of the coal plants are in the latter stages of their life, their economic life. And the graph that you see on the right-hand side gives a trend line to show how that EAF is going down. So as this goes down, normally under most country systems, you have a new generation coming on board to alleviate the decline in the amount of energy that is actually generated. In our case, our new generation that's coming on is happening too slowly and too late, and that's been our challenge. And also, the power stations have been really taking on more strain than what they would normally have done had there been proper maintenance and proper planning. We've had, I think Joshua spoke to the cost of load shedding. I'm not going to go through this word by word, but just to look at the issue around municipal revenue. Many customers are moving to their own generation, so there is some issues around municipal sustainability. What we're looking at is municipalities to be able to recognize this and change their municipal revenue models. There are municipalities that are also facing issues that as soon as they come out of a load shedding event, they have spikes as people who have installed batteries and inverters. Those start kicking in, and as a result, the networks can't handle that. And as a result of that, there's further penalties that get imposed on them by Eskom. And then we've also got, in terms of SMMEs, we recognize that they're most vulnerable, but we're also seeing larger companies that are increasingly unable to or unprepared to take the knock. And some of those are including companies that have large operations which require consistent power for long durations. And this is causing some havoc. On the financial costs, Joshua spoke to diesel. What we are trying to push for is to move to solar and batteries to offset the costs of diesel, because it is a more sustainable longer-term solution. And that's the thinking that we have here. Diesel is a short gap measure. And then, yeah, I mentioned the Eskom increases as well. So what have we been doing? This slide just illustrates a whole lot of work that's been happening by national government, by provincial government, and by local government. On the left-hand side here, these are the new generation projects, and most of these are renewable energy projects. In fact, all of them are renewable energy projects. And it shows that we already have about 1,000 megawatts of renewable energy projects that in commercial operation that are already providing power into the grid. And then we have bid windows in the auction style that the national government has, 2 bid windows, bid window 5 and bid window 6, of number of projects that have been proposed into the auctions. And then once they realize, we'll be looking at a large amount of power coming onto the network. Again, it has to be balanced against the amount of power that we're losing from coal power plants that are either being taken offline for repairs or that will be decommissioned as we go on time. On IPP procurement, we've got a pre-feasibility analysis. We're looking at supporting at the provincial government level a number of projects to procure power. City of Cape Town have been the pioneers. They've already got two procurements that are out in the market. 200 megawatts is the first tender that they released. And then earlier this year, they released a dispatchable power tender for 500 megawatts. And we're following suit, hoping for Stellenbosch municipality to release a 50 megawatt project within the course of the next year or so. In terms of wheeling, we see that private sector are able to work faster. Wheeling is essentially where projects can be generated, where power can be generated and then transferred across a municipal network with the project developers that are generating power entering into agreement with the actual customer on a municipal network to receive that power. And a lot of this helps with those companies that have got renewable energy targets. Usually they're multinationals, but increasingly we're seeing the benefit of many companies that are moving towards this and taking this into account. Of late, the City of Cape Town, I think over the last weekend, announced Growth Point Properties that have got one of the properties, I think Constantia Village, that has now been one of the first to secure a wheeling contract, wheeling power across City of Cape Town's grid into their property. We've also been assisting with rooftop PV to see whether companies could receive compensation for feeding electricity back into the network. And we've supported municipalities to get NERSA approved tariffs and to allow and to provide the proper frameworks so that this can happen. Of that, we've been tracking the growth since 2020. We see about 230 megawatts registered rooftop PV applications. We've excluded a huge spike that we saw earlier this year from City of Cape Town. They're still processing the numbers. They received over 2,500 applications. And this is essentially in the period from January to end of April. This exceeded the amount of applications that they received for the whole of 2022. So it shows you the growth of rooftop PV to mitigate load shedding. City of Cape Town have also introduced a cash for power. So not just will you be credited with money for feeding back into the grid, but you can be a net generator. So you can be compensated beyond credit for generating back into the grid, dependent on size, obviously, of how much you consume and how much you can feed back. On the demand side management and energy efficiency side, the city is started a demand aggregation program. It's commonly known as the Power Heroes program, where they're aiming to get about 60 megawatts of load reductions to potentially mitigate one more stage of load shedding beyond what they currently do with the Steenbras pump storage scheme. They've also been able to, in selected areas, provide load curtailment agreements. Essentially, this is allowing various companies, facilities, and usually medium to large facilities that are on dedicated feeders to be able to reduce their consumption, and as a result, be able to be mitigated for 1 or 2 stages of load shedding in those particular areas. Again, this is highly dependent on network configurations and the ability of the industries to be able to reduce their load. On the Western Cape government side, we've been using something called an ESCOM model, which is essentially performance contracting for energy efficiency, where we've already seen some savings of 25% at Easter Riviera Hospital. And then aside from that, there's a whole host of business support that's been offered previously, industry briefs, case studies, etc., that have been developed, and intelligence on the green economy that has been provided. And that has resulted in almost 13 billion rand worth of investment facilitated into the economy. In setting up all of this, it does require a certain amount of infrastructure. We've been assisting municipalities in setting up some of that infrastructure. So we've been funding 8 municipalities to undertake some of these foundational energy studies, which include electricity master plans that plan the electricity infrastructure that they would need to cater either for growth or for replacement of existing electricity infrastructure, and then to be able to cost that in what we call cost of supply studies so that they could provide transparent tariffs to the public. We also been specifically looking at how they could open this up to enable more renewable energy penetration at scale in their networks. This is going forward with our Department of Local Government, which had been doing this, but are going to continue to do this going forward. In terms of the program that we've initiated, so that was what we had have achieved. We've now shifted and evolved what we have been doing into the Western Cape Energy Resilience Program, which has 2 strategic objectives. The first one is to reduce the impacts of load shedding on businesses and citizens, and the second one is to facilitate a low level of reliance on ESCOM in the Western Cape. We've got some notional targets here over the term, and this is really aligned to what Joshua was showing around the growth for job strategy. which is up until 2035. It's taken a whole of government approach, and we've got 5 things that we are focusing on to achieve this objective. There's a load shedding relief program, a provincial IRP, a demand side management program, a new energy generation program, and a network development program. And we've taken a whole of government approach. So you'll see Joshua and his team tending to the SMME arena, but we've got other departments and other spaces in provincial, other units in provincial government that are attending to some of the other elements. I'm going to go into some of these very briefly. Earlier this year, under the disaster mitigation and management section, we provided, the Department of Local Government provided alternative energy supply in the form of diesel generations or grants for diesel generators for critical municipal services, essentially to provide generators for higher levels of load shedding, that is stage 6 and above. And this is aimed at water services and wastewater treatment. We've also been seeing, hoping to release emergency load shedding packs to lower LSMs. And then we've also been looking at, in the strategic planning, an integrated resource plan. This is specifically for the Western Cape, to be able to identify opportunities either for municipalities and or for private sector to be able to take up projects to meet growth targets that we're anticipating of 4 to 6% as per the growth for jobs strategy. On demand side management, we started with development of a program. This is based largely at advising and working with public sector facilities, usually municipalities, to be able to leverage their customer base to look at reductions in load, and then be able to see if we can negotiate that to buffer some amount of load shedding. And this will involve things like smart metering. It may involve load curtailment, demand aggregations, etc. So there's a lot of work that's been done under there and is developing further. On the generation, procurement and trading of low carbon energy, continuing our efforts on small scale embedded generation and wheeling. We've done a considerable amount of work to standardize some of the wheeling elements. We've worked with George Municipality, and now we're delivering that wheeling toolkits soon to launch to various municipalities so that they can actually undertake this and be able to provide private sector relief across their networks. On municipal IPP procurement, I talked about the 50 megawatts for Stellenbosch Municipality, but we're also looking at establishing a project preparation facility to assist other municipalities to have capacity to undertake power purchase agreements or to take projects to bankability. And we're also exploring the opportunity of a pooled buying mechanism. So pooled buying is trying to see if we can leverage the purchasing power of municipalities to be able to offtake power from larger developers, like in the national programs. Previously, we had a program that looked at LNG importation through Saldanha. The landscape has changed. We've seen some technology options and some limitations in terms of net zero carbon. So we're also looking at exploring gas power options to identify what the role of provincial government should be with regards to gas. And then there's a pilot project in municipalities looking at mitigating load shedding by potentially taking a small town or a small portion of a town off the network. And that's a specific project run by our Department of Local Government. Again, it does require a significant amount of work. It's in its throes at the moment, and there are a number of municipalities that have been engaging with our Department of Local Government on how they could partake in this activity. On a little bit of the more future side, we're looking at the opportunity for green hydrogen production at scale. We have vast amounts of renewable energy renewable energy resource that could potentially be tapped into to provide green hydrogen as a great export opportunity for markets in Europe and elsewhere. And then last but not least, there's a program looking at putting rooftop PV at schools. And this is really the schools that Western Cape government, the Western Cape government schools. And we're starting off by looking at about 100 schools and then seeing if we could scale that with as we go forward. On the maintenance and expansion of the required infrastructure, I spoke about the work we've done with electricity master plans. We're also looking into whether we can map out some of the transmission and distribution capacity, because capacity on the network has been limiting some of the ability for generation plants to come on stream, whether it's for the national procurements or even for municipal procurements. So we're looking at some of those aspects in the maintenance and expansion of those plans. And then we're looking at partnerships for co-financing some of this. We know that Eskom don't have the finance available to do all of this, and we're looking at other areas where growth is required or capacity expansion is required, and how would that be financed?
Mr. Trickham, I've got 2 minutes left for you.
Thank you. I've got about two more slides or so. And then the sixth point that we've been talking about is about the increased investment in the energy sector. So all of this work would require some level of investment. This is either from private sector or through investment finance. We know that there's a just energy transition at the national level. We are developing our own. We're also developing other alternative financing opportunities in the Western Cape. And then we're also looking at whether there's opportunities to unlock local content into manufacturing of some of these components in the Atlanta Special Economic Zone for green tech. And then lastly, but not least, our colleagues in economic development are looking at skills required for this, and have done considerable work in the wind and in solar sectors as well. So I think in summary, the program and the delivery of the program at the scale and speed needed requires full involvement. We've had great engagement with partners from all sectors. Continue to do so. We're open to solutions, engaging on ideas, and understanding challenges. We're also looking to call on those that have influence in some circles to lobby and advocate for change towards a decentralized and diversified energy landscape that builds resilience, both to energy, but also in the future challenge of climate change. The one point I wanted to mention, which I don't think Joshua mentioned, which is an addition, was about the expanded 125% renewable energy tax incentive for businesses. So the challenge with this is that, and this is the bottom line, it has yet to be promulgated by a gazette, by National Treasury, before SARS can actually provide the benefit. So that is still to come, but essentially it allows a business to claim a benefit from SARS. And it was in existence before, but it was in existence at a limited point, because it was only for projects less than 1 megawatt. The expanded incentive would look at projects that generate more than 1 megawatt, and then you could claim back at least 125% of what you put in. So, and the example here is a renewable energy investment of R1 million is made by a business, then that business would qualify for a deduction of 1.225 million. And then according to Treasury, this deduction would reduce the corporate income tax liability of the company by about 337,500 in that first year of operation. So this just gives you an idea of some of the incentives that national government are to offer. Again, the bottom line still needs to be promulgated. So that's it from my side, Deputy Speaker. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trickham. I know how complex and technical energy is, so thank you for your time. It really is something that you require time for people to understand it. We will move directly over to Ms. Frashier to start speaking on the economic growth SME project for the City of Cape Town. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Frashier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I'm not even going to put the slide presentation on. I know that we're pressed for time and we really, really want to hear from our stakeholders. So I'm just briefly going to give the background. The City of Cape Town has a project called 10,000 Jobs by Christmas. It is driven by Alderman James Voss. Regrettably, no one from City of Cape Town could be with us today. So I requested the information from them, and all the information will be shared with you together with all the other presentations after the discussion ends today. Just briefly speaking, the aim of this enterprise and supply development is to enable SMMEs in the Western Cape or in the City of Cape Town to start to grow and to thrive. And with that, they do quite a number of initiatives, essentially centering around connecting people to markets, connecting people to partners, connecting people to opportunities and liaising with people, as well as connecting people to skills development. So in the presentation and the document that would be shared with you, all the information on all these various aspects are in there for you, with contact details, email addresses, telephone numbers, as well as websites. So all the SMMEs in the Cape Metropolitan area, please read through the information, please make use of the information and the opportunities that is provided to you. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. That is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fischer. And I think most people have also heard a lot of the advertising. I think they've partnered with Heart FM on those jobs, 10,000 jobs before Christmas. Now we will, if we can just have literally I'm going to just say a 5-minute break, a quick 5-minute break, then we'll go immediately into the discussions, opportunities and the inputs from our various stakeholders online. So if we can put a timer on 5 minutes, we'll come back sharp so that we've actually maximized the time and engagement with our stakeholders. If I can just ask one of the administration to somehow watch that timer, if
Deputy
possible.
Deputy Speaker, can I suggest 3 minutes? Then we're back at
Perfect.
3:15.
Perfect. We'll be
then
back
3:15 is nice and easy. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Cell phone. So I'd like to start. I trust everybody's still online. Thank you very much, Ms. Fisher. So we're going to start with our inputs from our stakeholders in terms of any of the lived experience or comments that you want to make regarding the energy crisis, regarding measures taken by the sector to insulate yourself against this growing crisis, the impact of post-impact of COVID-19, the rising inflation and on domestic tourism, as well as some of the strategies that could be employed to stimulate tourism more in terms of its domestic and foreign tourism into the Western Cape. So any recommendations? You have the raise your hand function, and you can just raise your hand and I will recognize you. Are there any questions, comments, or input that you would like to make? Thank you, Mr. Dell. I see you. You may proceed.
Good day. Thank you very much for this presentation. It's very nice to meet you. We always see you guys in the media. One of the things, I live in Hessequa on the Southern Cape. And we're in the middle of everything and in the middle of nothing, because everything happens in George and everything happens in Cape Town. Our infrastructure is not very good, but we do have infrastructure, and our area is mostly agricultural. And when we talk about tourism and those types of things, it's all very small lifestyle type businesses. The economy around here doesn't allow big businesses to survive in the area. It's all small lifestyle businesses. The owners are in the business and 1 or 2 employees, and they're doing their thing. And the problem that we're sitting with is most of these businesses, the white businesses, and I'm going to say it now, the white businesses are excluded from most opportunities because they don't fit the criteria. The black businesses are excluded because they are below the criteria of what is expected from these businesses. And these businesses create most, other than the municipality and maybe 1 or 2 big businesses in the area, these small businesses do most of the employment in the area. And most of all these efforts which you guys are talking about goes over the top of all of our businesses. I'm on the business council here, and we see this every day, that our small businesses, our black-owned businesses, our micro businesses are excluded of all these things. And the acknowledgement is that, yes, these businesses are too small. But unless somebody other than the local business community also invest in these small businesses, they're never going to grow big enough to become part of this bigger grouping of businesses that can take a part of this opportunity. I've got a lot of other things to say, but I'm not going to say it, because this is the most crucial part, is that in our area, most of our businesses are considered too small to take part of this, and nobody's addressing that specific sector of the economy, including tourism. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dell. I wonder if Ms. Kumburis or Mr. Wolmarans wants to come in there. I fully understand, as having been part of the sector for a while, and that your micro SMEs get to be left out. So it's almost like the extension of the bell curve, and the businesses on either side get excluded. I wonder if anybody from the Western Cape government can comment on these comments made. Not there we go, Ms. Kumburis, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. So just from our side, if I can speak from the fund, the G4J Tourism Challenge Fund, we don't have a minimum size of business or maximum size of business that can apply. So I think the concern maybe here is just rather, did they get the message? Are they on the necessary social media networks or visiting our website regularly to get that information? Even though we also share the fund with the local tourism officers, and then they would also distribute the information further. So I think that's maybe just the biggest concern is just how are they aware of it? But we don't have a minimum for that.
That's great news. Thanks, Ms. Kombaris. And I think just perhaps if you could put in the chat, just put the website address for our stakeholders to be able to directly access. That would be very much and very much helpful. Thank you very much. Anybody else that would like to give comment or raise some concerns, provide some solutions? How are you dealing with the electricity load shedding schedules, and you know, have you really recovered from COVID-19 lockdowns? I speak to businesses and they're only just starting to recover. I don't know how you finding that amongst businesses around you. Any food over there? Mr. Dell, over to you again.
Sorry for being the next speaker once again, but there wasn't any other hands raised. Once again, in our small little town, we're actually in Heidelberg in the Western Cape. Our town and the surrounding farms and the farm workers, we are about 15,000 people in total, and we are very hard hit by the power outages. A lot of our accommodation businesses have actually closed down. We are experiencing well, small economy, so most of our tourism is people that's coming here, staying over, doing work at the bentonite mine or doing work with the municipality or SSK, and then they're leaving again, or they're just stopping over here and then leaving the next morning to continue their journey. So a lot of our accommodation businesses have closed down. A lot of our suppliers of food, people that make prepared meals, those types of things have closed down. We've only got 2 restaurants left in town, of which only one operates after 5 in the evenings anymore. So KFC has closed down. The pizza shops has closed down. The only people that's doing business really are the 2 garages on the N2, and they can only employ so many people. And once people stop, put their fuel in, buy something from the little snippy, then they drive again. So the N2 traffic is touted as the tourism traffic, but the tourist doesn't stop because there's nothing allowing them to stop. And our people, our young people, are migrating out of the area. So our areas are also becoming older population, and the older population's economic power is also diminishing. And this is, like I said, we're in the middle of everything and in the middle of nothing. So one of the things that we've been doing in the area is people have been putting up solar panels, and disconnecting that from the municipal network, because they don't have the ability and the financing to do grid-tied connections. So what they're doing is they're putting up solar panels and they're doing it in a UPS style method. And I'm telling you now, I'm advising them how to do that and to do it, because that's the cheapest way and the safest way for them to have power to run their businesses and their small little lifestyle businesses. And they depend on that. If they don't run that, they don't have income at the end of the month, and they don't buy food and whatever. So we are lucky that we have a very low crime rate. So when people put up solar panels, it stays there, it doesn't get stolen. When people buy batteries, it stays there. But it means that people are downscaling their businesses to be able to survive, and that creates a lot of job losses. In my business alone, over the last 2 years, we went from 14 people to 8 people just to be able to survive. I've got a system which caters 100% for my business. If we manage it carefully, if it's a day like today, we are using the batteries, and if it's tomorrow like that, the generator has got to start. So the impact is real. The people are downscaling. People are spending less at the shops, which is available. External owners of businesses close down their businesses because they're not here. They cannot recover some of their cost by operating themselves in the business. They've got to have remote managers and so on. And it's a very difficult situation. I don't see that we're going to grow our economy unless we've got a reliable power solution. Our Hessequa municipality is one of the premier forward-looking municipalities, but they're also constrained in what they can do because the 9 towns in Hessequa is also all very low economic activity towns, except for Witza, Stolbaai. But Stolbaai can't carry the whole municipality. So it's a real concern. And my concern is that everything, like I said previously, goes to either Cape Town and that area there, or Atlantis, the special economic zone, or to George. So my suggestion would be is if the municipality could look at maybe sending somebody, and why I'm saying the Hessequa area, because it's the middle of 54,000 people living here, which is underserviced by the Western Cape government. The municipality does everything in their power, but they also rely on the Western Cape government to fund them and also to bring initiatives to the area. And the municipality cannot do this alone. And other businesses like software development businesses, which we also do, we struggle a lot because of infrastructure and skills. Young people leave. Other people don't want to come and live in the rural areas. So our businesses are constrained by not just power, but also skills availability. And the area isn't marketed and promoted as a growth area. There's big opportunities for secondary agriculture, but because of the N2, as well as the railway lines, as well as the fact that there's massive agriculture going in the area, but there's nobody investing. There's no private investors because they don't see a growth in the property values or a growth in the interest of the Western Cape in this region, which would satisfy their need for a future profitability on the money they invest now. So I would suggest somebody from the Western Cape government come to this area, come and spend a week here, come and meet everybody, and not just do a marketing tour or a media tour, but actually talk to people, talk to businesses, look at the opportunities. There's massive opportunities, but it's underserviced at this point in time. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dell. Yes, I can fully understand that our rural areas will probably be feeling the brunt of, the economic squeeze that we're under. So it is, towns like this, particularly that are sitting between large towns and large cities, are particularly affected. But then again, we have, sort of the Riversdale that sits through the N2 and taking full advantage of the small shops around, that are sort of micro economic zones that get put around the N2, and certainly an opportunity for someone to look at. But thank you very much. I now see Ms. Schrader, over to you. You would like to ask or comment?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
My apologies again for my video footage. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Okay, but I'm going to make a few comments. It's not necessarily in a proper order, but just my heart for things. First thing, thank you for inviting us to be part of this. It is like one of the speakers, it's kind of here and there over, over the top. It's a bit too much and too big and what, but it's also good to know there's a bigger things and broader things on the go. I would like to, my heart for all this thing is, we are not where we want to be, but we are not where we used to be. So I'm at the opinion that there's lots of opportunities, but it takes work. So my passion is training. So thank you for the training you are providing already and planning and what. Please just keep in mind this time of year is high season on the West Coast, okay? So for us to take people from their jobs and take them to other towns, it's not a lot, it's not very practical. So we'd love to send our people and we love to go ourselves, but we have to be on the job at the moment. So just take that in mind, if you don't mind. Season, when you do these things. I want to suggest something. If you can remember, in the old days, UNISA had in every small town an exam center before we went online. So there was one lady that was trained, and at a house or in the school library or at the attorney's office, there was one lady with a little center, kind of a room that was safe and comfortable for everybody. And whenever you had to write your exam, whatever subject it was, that lady was trained to facilitate and support the whole process. So I'm just leaving an idea with you. We are very blessed with Swartland municipality. Are they doing everything right? For sure not, but they are trying really, and they are really doing their bit. Swartland, the tourism guys restructured, doing excellent, not where we want to be, but surely not where we used to be. And we have to allow them some time. And if we, we get in and we work all together, I think in 3 or 4 years' time from now, we will really be a prominent tourist area. But I know that Swartland is also working with West Coast College now in terms of providing material for training courses, etc. But a woman that stays in Darling in Atlas, she's got 3 kids. She's working 4 or 5 or 6 days in Azafontein in the tourism area, which is big, tourism sector. She cannot go to the West Coast College. She's got to keep on working and training. So it must be an and. And I would love, my dream is that in the 4 major towns in Swartland, we have that UNISA center. It's an informal place. It's just got to be where we are online with the big screen. So the funding would be the big screen. And then at the back, there must be a facilitator. So you are still online and you are telling us how to submit our documents for funding or whatever. But she's around there and she can work the electronics and she can be part of, that training session, whether it's whatever the topic is. For me, for funding, for instance, that could be a real thing, or for customer service or whatever. So it'd be great and we don't need to buy a building, and we don't. I think in our communities, there will be people that put up their hands and say, you can have my office on a Wednesday between 4 and 6 for free. You buy or you give us the funding for the big screen, and we'll see if you've got a trained person for, facilitator for those 2 or 3 hours, and I can get that lady in that's working in as a cleaner or a welcoming staff in a tourist setup, and the owner of the business will support her and undescribe whatever and say, okay, the last 2 hours of every Wednesday you come for training, and off you go, and after 2 or 3 months you've got a kind of a certificate of attendance or whatever. So that's something I see, because the jobs is the main thing. We've got stories to tell. We've got beautiful things that we'd like to share with the people in Durbanville, the guys from Hopefield, but also the guys from Norway and from France and from Ghana and whatever. But at the moment, we need that extra something. And I think training is a lot, you know, creating small businesses and keep them sustainable. You must first have the confidence in your own abilities or your own potential, or you must first help these smaller, younger, or less trained people to see that dream, to see the picture. And if I don't, and the training, I think it'll lead on to the next and the next. So that is just one thing. I don't know, I'm not sure, maybe it's worth something. So maybe there should be a train the facilitator thing first, and maybe go a bit slower, but then we've got a network, and the network will give us the strength to roll out all of this wonderful stuff that I'm hearing from you. And I also don't know a lot about it, but please just keep us on the line, keep us in the emails, please, please, please. Okay, in terms of load shedding costs us, and it takes away budget from marketing. And because it's unforeseeable, it's difficult to plan, and it's difficult to work cost effectively with limited resources. That's load shedding for me. Okay, I can say a lot of things. My husband used to be a senior guy in Eskom, and he's not anymore. And do we like Eskom? Not a lot, but we know we have to solve it. So for me personally, in my business, it takes away money from marketing. Okay, secure. I've been fortunate to be around a bit in the last year, whether it's in Europe or in Namibia, and money spent on marketing at the moment, it's not. Hoe sê mense in Afrikaans? It's nie regverdig bane. It's difficult to say yes, it's the right thing to do because of security perceptions. And in Eisefontein we are blessed, and in the Swartland we are blessed with quite a secure area, and the way we do things, and we feel free and we feel happy, and we're up and going. But it's also part of the general, you know, the bigger South Africa. And I can just say so many times, I can say, but it is safe in the Western Cape. Hey, you're part of Africa, you're part of South Africa. So that is a thing for us. That's a big thing. Marketing, why should I spend on marketing now? I'd rather keep my money for other things, another point. And then funding, because we are not low on resources, but we are limited on resources. It means that when I apply for funding, or when I put my name up for a certain project, I must be 100% sure that's the right thing, because I haven't got time to not be, you know, on the right thing here. I mustn't miss it. I must know this is for previously advantaged businesses. No problem. We need to look after them as well. We need to I understand that, but I need to be very specific in terms of where I apply, because I've got so much time, and that'll be a Friday night or a Sunday morning, 4 o'clock, getting up to do it. So if you can help us with identifying that a bit more clearer, that would be very nice. That's another point I'd like to make. And then in terms of, I've heard grading council, grading the stars. It's still a little thing with us. I'm not sure if the guest house community still thinks, or already thinks, that it is worthwhile to do it, because does it really improve or add to our business? Does it really? And it's slow, and you get a lot of emails, and then it says this, and then it says that. I'd like to have one person that I work with in the Swartland or in the West Coast, and that's our grading guy, and he gets to know us, and we don't need a million of them, but we'd like to support him, but he must also make things flow a bit. It's up and down and up and down, and yeah, I think we can do better there, but if we have different people working with all the time, yeah, it'd be great if we can have more, you know, allocated group or a team or whatever that works on the West Coast or on the. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe it's already there, but it'd be great if they then can communicate with us. Okay, and then that's it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schrader. I think what's very important is remember that the municipalities also play an active role in tourism, and they are to provide the framework of tourism in local towns particularly. I know that the Western Cape government has an active provincial focus, as well as Westgrow even does a focused area on towns outside of the city of Cape Town, because generally the city of Cape Town is self-sustainable. It almost draws on its own tourism. You don't have to put lots of marketing in. But I think what we must also be very, very aware of is that today social media is where a lot of the advertising is happening. I'd probably say that Facebook is one of the most affordable mechanisms to advertise, targeting people to your business, particularly in the hospitality area. And then I suppose the Western Cape government can come in here, Ms. Kumbaris, but I think grading will change over time, because people go on to, for example, Airbnb, and they look at ratings. They look at what civil society or people that visit an area will say about the venue or the stay, overnight stay. And I wonder whether that is not going to take precedence over time. I can't recall when I last looked at grading, maybe more so in South Africa, but definitely not overseas. You look at ratings, you go onto booking.com, and you actually read what people say, because in the end of the day, citizen journalist will tell you whether your stay was worth it or not. So, Ms. Kumbaris, I don't know if you want to come in there. I shouldn't be speaking on behalf of yours. Over to you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. So from the tourism grading perspective, I am more than happy to maybe set up a meeting with Ms. Schrafer. Apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly, just to maybe run through things that they are planning or looking at, because I think your point is very valid, especially with regards to how different platforms rate things. Like if you look at booking.com, they've got their own type of rating, and it does seem that what is this? It's almost like the person's own experience is carrying a bit more weight these days than just a normal star or a 3-star, etc. So that could be a very interesting conversation. We are actually doing workshops with the Tourism Grading Council, including the Department of Tourism, with regard to that green incentive program, where we are going around to different provinces to have engagements with the industry. And maybe our next engagements should be in your region. And then I think it would be great if you maybe highlight some of these questions that you've got.
Ms. Kumbaris, how often do you visit the smaller towns, or is there a way, will it all be on the website if you're on your way to go and do a stakeholder engagement in Hesselby, for example?
So at the moment, we're taking our lead from the Tourism Grading Council. So they're actually identifying specific towns that they would like to visit. Like I know the next one they actually put on the map is Robertson, for example. But I can always have a discussion with them and see if we can't put the West Coast and a specific town, Esterfontein, maybe on that list, and we can then communicate through the tourism officers. But if Ms. Schrafer can also maybe just send me an email, so I've got her contact details, then I can maybe liaise with her directly as well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kumbaris. Are there any further comments, questions? Ms. Schrader, I trust you. Is your hand up again? Oh, I see. Mr.
No, I don't know why it's still. I don't know why it's still there. No, I just want to say. Also, I don't see, Esterfontein is a nice, I mean, we've got more than 250 guest options, whether it's houses or what. So it is definitely a center, but I try to look at the Swartland more as a destination in general, because yeah, you know, the thing about tourism, it's always a we thing, it's not a me thing. And if we can, you know, share and make it a bigger project, and Lizelle at the tourism office in Malmesbury overlooking the thing, she's really very supportive, and she'd love to, you know, be involved and see how we can network. And whatever we're doing, at least as long as we do things, it doesn't need to be perfect the first time around. And we can't get up, you know, we won't be able to get everything right in the first time, but as long as we keep going and keep speaking to one another, it's super.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Trickham?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to talk to maybe two elements that I've just heard from Mr. Dell and Mrs. Smith. We realize that the cost of batteries is particularly high.
Yeah.
And essentially, grid connection affords you a cheaper way to keep connected. And we've been going forward saying that, you know, don't disconnect from the grid completely, because there are benefits of the grid from a affordability perspective. One of the challenges that I think, and I mentioned it earlier, one of the challenges is about the sustainability of the municipality. So as we're seeing with Eskom, it's called a utility death spiral. As more and more customers start migrating off, the remaining customers have to bear the brunt of the increases. And those are the ones that actually can't afford to necessarily go off. So municipal revenue becomes an issue. In the past, municipalities have relied on two forms of income. One is the rates, and the second is actually electricity income. And a lot of the electricity incomes in the past have been not transparent. They've been used to cross-subsidize other elements. We're seeing now, at least over the last couple of years, about greater transparency, reduction in cross-subsidization, and even to the point where, you know, we might get to a point where, you know, the direct costs will be provided by the municipalities onto consumers. We're clearly seeing that, in fact, across the board with all of the municipalities in the Western Cape, at least. And part of the reason that is happening right now is the cost of supply studies is allowing the municipality to be able to cost that in. So they know better what the cost of the infrastructure, the cost of their planned infrastructure upgrades are going to be. So we've been seeing a declining trend in certain cost structures within the municipality over time, right? So we don't advocate for going off-grid, because going off-grid then starts affecting municipal sustainability. And then, you know, your challenge is that the municipality will struggle to start supporting other services, or the rates would increase to the same amount that your electricity your electricity income would have been providing. So that, I think that's the one point I wanted to raise. What we're also seeing, I'm talking to Ms. Schroeder here around the Swartland municipality. So sorry, before I go off Hesekwa, I must say our engagements with both the senior management of Hesekwa municipality, mayors, municipal managers, as well as the technical teams have been amazing. We've been engaging very closely. Albie Lester, the special advisor to the Premier, has been engaging very closely with a number of the different teams, together with our Department of Local Government. Local government teams have been visiting Hesekwa. So when you say come out and visit, they've been visiting Hesekwa to check the electrical infrastructure, the state of it, to check whether the diesel generators that were installed can be used, you know, a number of different aspects that they've been working together with the local teams on. So there have been direct engagements there. And all in the support of trying to see whether there can be some solutions that can be provided at a municipal level. So that's the one point I wanted to raise. We're also seeing that, I think, in most towns, there are a number of labor absorbing entities. So I think not just in sort of the greater Esekwa area, around Riversdale, etc., but also if you look at the West Coast areas, there are a couple of big customers on the network that are looking at diversifying their intake points, either investing themselves, but still staying connected, or wheeling, utilizing wheeling within their networks. And a lot of the very large customers in those areas are actually supplied by Eskom directly. So there's limited opportunities for us to work with them, and they are already on curtailment programs to make sure that the businesses can continue to operate for longer periods of time. And curtailment, like I said earlier, allows them to benefit from if they reduce their consumption, usually by investing in energy efficiency, but also by investing in alternative energy. So let's say they invest in some sort of either diesel generators, or just adjusting their schedules to make sure that the combined impact of the electricity consumption is spread across the day as opposed to certain times of the day. Those are some of the applications that we've seen, so that they can then be exempt from stages 1 to 2 levels of load shedding. So I think that's a key aspect we're seeing across the board in Eskom areas. And outside of Eskom, only City of Cape Town has been able to provide it, and that's largely because the networks are controlled. The load shedding is controlled in all municipalities really by Eskom. It's only the City of Cape Town that has got the metros that have got the ability to manage their networks. And then the last point was around skills. So we have got skills specifically on the PV side. There's an engagement together with West Coast College. They've got skills on solar photovoltaic installers, mounters, etc. And it's not just centered around particular areas. I think they've even extended it out to Friedenberg as well, to their campus there as well. And that's just giving an indication that there is a spread about on the skills program. Our skills team are also looking at alternative methods of delivery. So there's a working group, again, under the Growth for Jobs initiative. There's a working group on energy looking at skills that's saying, can we deliver it in a different style? Can we deliver it in the way that you had described, Mr. Schrader, where there'll be some contact period, but also some period where you can work from your current situation. And that's a model that's been used predominantly in Germany and some of the European countries, and they're testing appetite to be able to implement something like that, at least on the energy side in South Africa. And that's it. That's all I wanted to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trickham. Mr. Dell, and then we will wrap up. Over to you, Mr. Dell.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to comment that I'm not advising people to go off-grid. I'm advising them to install off-grid energy solutions for when load shedding takes place, so that those solutions are not grid-tied, which takes a lot of the cost out of putting those solutions in place. So I'm not advising people to go off-grid. In fact, I don't think you can go off-grid once you are on the grid, on the municipality grid. But in my instance, I was building a new house and there was no electricity and there was no law that required me to connect to. So that's the one thing. The other thing is the municipalities need to stop making profit on services which they deliver, which they have no control over. And this is electricity and water. Well, not water so much, because municipalities can manage their water by themselves, but they can't manage electricity themselves. And it's a very dangerous service to use as a profit-making service so that you can fund other opportunities. I've been talking a lot with the Esekwa municipality, and there's no A or nay or reaction yet, but one of the ways that we can cut down on the municipal budget is to actually support local businesses. We talk all about supporting local businesses, creating opportunities for local businesses. Why do the municipality have to employ 15 people to clean the streets when that could be given to 2 or 3 private companies which are currently indigent people, which could form their own cleaning service, clean streets, as a contract to the municipality? They employ people, they lessen the amount of indigent which the municipality has to cater for, and the salary bill of the municipality is less. Those are types of things which municipalities can employ to shrink their budget requirements and also uplift the community, create job opportunities in the communities, those types of things. One of the things I was talking about was allowing businesses to have a less costly conversion of land use of property so that businesses can operate on those properties and then charge them more for their services, because the businesses should be in the business of making money, and people advocate, oh, less cost on services. I don't advocate that. I say if the municipality needs to charge you this for services, then you as a business need to be able to make enough profit to pay for those services. But there are things like really asking somebody 20,000 Rand to convert a house into a tourism residence. You know what? It's going to cost you just about a year's worth of renting out before you make that 20,000 Rand back, before you start making a profit. I don't know in these big cities, but this is what's happening here. So there are opportunities for municipalities to shift their profit-making income from electricity to other types of either diminishing the budget requirements, and also in the same aspect creating small businesses in small towns through contracts, and also at the same time diminishing the indigent population within those small towns, which is all a win-win for everybody, because then everybody works together with this, and it's not just on the municipality to make sure that everything is getting done. But yeah, so I'm just putting it out there. And then the other thing is, we all pay rates and taxes. We know the municipality uses it to do profit generation, but they should look at ways of doing taxes on turnover, business turnovers, forcing businesses to license when they want to operate in a town. Doesn't matter which type of business it is, because those businesses have an impact on the town, impact on the economy, impact on the social structure of towns. And some businesses can operate without licenses, and they do impact the towns, and the municipality can use that as a different income generation strategy and lessen the dependence on electricity, which they have no control over. So those are quite a few things which is available, which I think we look at, but because you are focusing on other issues which are bigger issues, which are global, encompassing everybody issues, you don't look at these small little things which could make a difference. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. I think those are rather large issues about changing the Municipal Finance Management Act, where electricity is one of the largest incomes for for municipalities. And to also remember the mindset of the big engine of a municipality is very difficult to change. But I'm sure that eventually the public will push municipalities into having to find new ways of generating income beyond just the complacency of getting income from energy. I certainly think that's the way that it will always be the public that changes the government. So I look forward to it, because I think things will come out, new innovation will come through, and municipalities will have to think ahead of the game in order to remain relevant, and that isn't a bad thing. So Thank you very much, Mr. Dell, Ms. Schrader, for providing input. I'm going to hand over to Ms. Fouché to just summarize some of the key matters raised, and then we will end this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. A very good chair. Sorry, I've been making notes on the meeting. It's just because I'm mindful of the fact that it's time and everyone's busy. So what I have noted down as the key issues that were raised that I would like to take forward, Speaker, to the work of Western Cape Provincial Parliament, is that the first one is that we need to focus on the following in the tourism sector in the Western Cape. The first one is building resilience in the sector. The second one is partnerships within the sector, but also public-private partnerships and information sharing. I think one of the things that came up consistently through the discussion was that people didn't know this, they were not aware of it, and I think that is that we should flag that as very high importance. Another matter that was raised was micro businesses that do not benefit from government and municipal initiatives due to their size, and that is something that we should look at. I know that Lindy commented on that as well. Another key point that was raised, and we in Cape Town, we hear that quite a lot, tourism and SMME developments and support outside of Cape Town and George. It's always Cape Town and George. Hey? So we have to look at outside Cape Town and George. Then centers for assistance and skills development in small towns, combining academic learning and practical learning so that you don't take people away from the workplace for the training. I think that was a very important point raised. And then the decentralization of services. From all the points raised, people wanted someone closer, someone that is not based in Cape Town or in Johannesburg or whatever the case may be. And I think you very aptly said, Deputy Speaker, the role of the municipalities. And maybe that is something that we need to maybe take to the Standing Committee on Local Government and see how we can get a partnership even between those two ministries. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. That's it from me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fouché. Well summarized there, and definitely very important points, very pertinent for our standing committees, points that they can actually deal with. So once again, a big thank you to all the attendees. This is a good start to really connecting policymakers, lawmakers with stakeholders such as the tourism sector. We cannot put enough attention to this very important economic sector for the Western Cape. Thank you very much for your time this Friday. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.